Hello, this is Chris Safarova. Welcome to another episode of the Strategy Skills Podcast. Before we start today's interview, I have a free download for you. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies, free download, go to firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. It is firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And today we have with us Emily Field. Emily is a partner in McKinsey Seattle office. She helps organizations with distributed workforces deliver on their performance goals with the role of the manager front and center. Emily holds a BA in government from Georgetown University. Welcome, Emily. It's so great to have you with us today.
Chris, it's great to be here.
Emily, so before we dive into very important work you are doing related to middle management, maybe we could talk a little bit about your story, how you ended up at McKinsey, became a partner. I know there is an interesting story there.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. It feels like a bit of a winding path, but maybe if we go back in time to almost 15 years ago, I was a senior at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. I was a government major, and I was studying history and Spanish as my minors, and I also was interning at an education nonprofit. I was really passionate about the education nonprofit, and also practically it was the highest paying work-study job I could find, so I grabbed it. Through that education nonprofit, I found that education and access and economic mobility was really important to me. And I got to know a great group of folks, right? Then from there, I went on to intern at an education nonprofit consulting firm, right? Sort of taking, connections and learnings from one nonprofit and said, could I expand my impact through consulting? I had no idea what consulting was. And of course, it took different shapes and sizes, but this was really around helping nonprofits on their missions and fundraising strategies. And then, I was entering my senior year and people were on campus talking about the Career Center and interviewing. And I was thinking, like, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing when I graduate college, but everyone else is applying for jobs. I suppose I will too. I started also just talking to folks at this nonprofit consulting firm and saying, hey, like, consulting's really interesting. I love serving nonprofits. I love having impact and feeling like I'm making a difference. And understanding what options are out there. And people started connecting me to their networks and helping me meet people. And so I went through the consulting on-campus path of sort of applying and interviewing, and ultimately ended up getting a job in a management consulting development program. And I had no idea what consulting was. I could not explain it. I remember just saying, I'd always thought I'd go to law school. I came from a family where people were teachers and, my dad was a cheesemaker and my mom sort of worked side jobs to around childcare. I didn't have like this exemplar. I didn't know like what a great business leader looked like. And I had really no aspirations to be a business leader, to be honest. And so I fell into this by happenstance. And then what I would say, I told you this was a little of a long story, but like the other interesting thing too was, so I got to consulting and my very first project was doing a project with a large national law enforcement agency. And it was all around leadership development. And I thought, I didn't know that's what consulting was. We were helping develop their future leaders to thwart terrorism. What a mission, right? For 22-year-old me. And I was so inspired by it. And what I did is I really took stock of the fact that I loved that, right? I got so much energy from it. I was so excited. And I just kept leaning into that. I kept thinking like, I'm so excited to jump out of bed bright and early to get to do this work. And so I got so incredibly fortunate, right? One, people told me, hey, explore consulting, right? And I did, and I had no idea what it was. Two, my very first project was something that I just absolutely adored. And I just sort of kept on this path, right? Kept connecting with people I liked from whom I learned. And then I was working at the time in Germany as a consultant, and McKinsey reached out to me and about a role, and I responded to the LinkedIn message, thought, hey, this might not go anywhere. And I was super excited. Every interaction I had was super energizing. I felt like I was learning so much from the people that were interviewing me that I said, why not make the jump and really think about it as a way to learn and grow and challenge myself. And that was about almost 6 years ago now. And I'd say I still get to learn and challenge myself every day with people that I really like, who I learned from.
Such an incredible story, Emily. I actually remember also when I was in consulting, I remember working once. Well, it happened that I had that thought more than once, but I remember specifically one time I was working from an event and I was thinking, I cannot believe I get paid to do this work because I love it so much. I agree with you. It's an incredible work. It can be tough, but the fact that it gives you energy allows you to do the long hours and so on. So you worked at McKinsey before pandemic, after pandemic. How did it change? How did the experience change for you?
Well, I think some things stayed the same, and certainly to your point, Chris, some things changed, right? The thing that stayed the same is working with really talented teams and on big pressing challenges of organizations, right? So that has remained unchanged. How do we help our clients achieve more than they ever thought possible? How do we help them solve their thorniest people challenges? How do we help them accelerate value through talent, right? So that has remained unchanged. I'd say what has changed, right, is how we do it, right? Physically, where, for a long time we were in our homes, right? And now, and very much remote. Now we're saying, hey, when do we come back together in a really purposeful way? Let's not go all the way back to how it was before of, 4 days a week in the office traveling, but how do we say, let's come together for those really key moments that are going to have the most impact, both for answering the problem we're trying to solve, but also for our own development and for our own ability to collaborate and to be in that flow, right? To be having that fun. It's more fun to be in person a lot of the time than it is just to be sort of, staring at each other on Zoom screens.
Very true. Certain things you just cannot do via Zoom. Emily, and when you joined McKinsey, I know it was some time back, but do you remember what really surprised you once you joined? Something maybe you did not expect?
It's a really good question. I think the thing that surprised me most was getting to just work with incredibly talented people. I knew folks would be really talented, right? But getting to learn so much from my clients, right? Sometimes I joke with my clients like that they teach me more than I teach them. And getting to feel sometimes like I'm really apprenticing under my clients, getting to observe interactions, to learn, how, whether it's, hey, we're building an entirely new talent acquisition function, right? I've never led a TA function, but I got to build one, right? And I learned so much about that. Or if I'm building, a talent marketplace to help Ukrainian refugees, wow, I learned so much, right? And so getting to just learn so much every day, and specifically from my clients, has just been truly a pleasure. And so I always think, how can I make sure I'm helping my clients as much as I really feel like they're also helping me?
I totally understand what you mean. I remember, so when I was in consulting, you have to go and be on a project in one industry, then in another industry. And then when you start, you don't know anything about the industry other than just very superficial things. And it's incredible to me how fast you can become an expert. And I remember being on calls with very senior people within the industry, within the companies, even government officials related to the industry. And I would know things that they don't know because I a straight A student. I had to know everything I can as fast as I can. So totally understand your experience. So exciting. And what have you found most challenging?
I think, to be honest, it's in part because I find everything exciting. How do you prioritize, right? You can't do it all at once. And so really being disciplined about what are the areas where I'm super excited to focus and sticking with those areas, so that you can go really deep, add value versus sort of spreading yourself super thin, and doing a little bit everywhere, right? It allows you to add so much focus, so much energy and intentionality to how you're spending your time, so that you can really have the most impact possible.
And you bring up such an important topic because for a lot of our listeners, time management is such a crucial concern because we have so much that we need to do, we need to accomplish. We have so many demands on our time. Have you found any practical things that you can share that people can implement?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you actually a bit of a funny story. I was working with a colleague, and we were trying to just align calendars to get together to huddle on something that was really exciting. And it just so happens that this gentleman was sharing his screen. So he said, let me just pull up my calendar so I could see his calendar. And he actually had this time block on Friday afternoon for like 3 hours. And it said TT. And I said, what's TT? Because I was like, oh, I could do there. I could do in there. You've got this 3 hour block. What's TT? And he said, that's thinking time. And I said, what do you mean it's thinking time? And he's like, I spend part of it going for a walk, reflecting on the past week, how my teams are doing, how my clients are doing, how we're moving the problems forward, just thinking. Then I spent another part of that time, putting together some thoughts, pen to paper. And then I spent time planning for the week ahead. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, when do you do that? And I said, I often don't, right? Or maybe, Sunday night. And he said, you got to plan it. And this is actually something men are better at this than women, right? Not being reactive to your calendar. It's easier said than done, especially in the era of, Zooms where you're scheduled absolutely back to back and you just get a calendar invitation and you just kind of accept it and you don't say, wait, what is this? What is the value I'm contributing? What's the objective? Do I need to be there, right? What's my role in this? And how does it map to my priorities, right? That reactivity. And so I've tried to be much more intentional, right? What's my TT, right? And so thinking about on my, now my Friday after, I won't say I've gotten to the 3 hours, but actually being able to say, how do I take stock? How do I really plan in an intentional way so that I'm best able to, to show up for my clients, show up for my teams, and prioritize, see around corners, plan ahead. And it allows you to be so much more focused then too on how you're spending your time.
That is such an incredibly important thing for people to do. And this is when you can see something that if you don't see it, you will lose a lot of time. You can find some very big errors, specifically in that time. That's why also when we're in the shower, we get all these important ideas because finally our mind is free and we can space out. We need more of that time. The reason it happens in the shower for most people is because we just don't have enough breathing room in our life. So if we had more of the thinking time, it would happen more often. We'll have more opportunities. Do you find that after pandemic, time management issue became less of an issue, given that you don't have to travel as much?
No, I think most people, right? We replaced our commute with time working, right? So I think it's actually a totally different issue in a way, right? Sometimes I challenge folks to say, hey, why don't we have this like beautiful history of our time. Go back to like February 2020. What did your calendar look like, right? How did you spend your time? Like it was I discovered these, I used to have lunch blocks, right? Because I'd go grab lunch at the cafeteria. Whereas now it's like I run downstairs while on a Zoom call, right? And so I think it's almost helpful to go back to your calendar and say, how did I used to spend my time? Now you might say, hey, it's not like a rinse and repeat, but actually what can I take forward? And then I think what's really important too, and this is, I think, the most complicated piece, is then being intentional about what you're doing where, right? And working with your teams on this. So being able to say, hey, as a team, when we come into the office, right, are we actually getting clear on what is the work we're going to do when we're together? So maybe if we are in the office on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, that's going to be for our like big idea generation, collaboration, creative thinking. We're also going to prioritize having our coaching one-to-one, in person. We're going to have connectivity, team events, whatever, right? And then when we're not in the office the other days, it's not that we're not going to meet, we're not going to hop on Zoom, but we're actually going to really prioritize our heads down time, right? And we're going to crank out our work that's best done asynchronously, and more focus on the coordination, not collaboration. And so being able to be really intentional about that, right? When we come together and we say, we just put in our headphones and we hop on Zoom, it's like, my goodness, why did I commute an hour plus, right? Why did we come together? Was that a good use of our time? And the other thing I'd say is, don't wait for your manager to make it a good use of your time. You've got to make it a good use of your time. And so I often ask my teams, right, hey, we just came together for a couple of days. Was it, what made it valuable? And what could make it even more valuable, right? We can be agents at this, right? I realize, right? It's a bit, it's easy to say, right? Especially if it's an edict on high that's saying, hey, come in, you've got to be in Tuesday to Thursday, and we're checking badge swipes, right? That's, not the most inspiring thing on the planet. But then we can say, okay, if that's the message, what are we going to do with the time? How are we going to make best use of the time so that we are being more innovative, right? We're driving the results and we're having fun and we're learning while we do it, right? There are diminishing returns to capability building on, when you're virtual, right? Versus being able to say, hey, turn your computer to me. Let's see how we could think about this together. Hey, let's pop over to the whiteboard. There's so many incredible collaboration tools. And, especially when you're working on large global teams, there's such value in hybrid. But being able to say, hey, what's the work we do when we come together, whether that's on a weekly basis or on a monthly or quarterly basis, based on the team structure and the ways of working, making best use of time is something we can really be great at if we're intentional.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone again for tuning in. Our guest today again has been Emily Field. Check out Emily's new book, Power to the Middle. And if you want to strengthen your strategy skills, get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. Free download, go to firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. It is firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. Take care, and I look forward to connect with you all next time.